It's Tuesday, August 12th, 2025. The Reconquista of Washington, D.C. begins. Mexico's president has some thoughts about immigration, and J.D. Vance lays out what's at stake with redistricting and a new census. Next on the AM Update. Well, the dominating piece of the news cycle yesterday was President Trump's invocation of the D.C. Home Rule Act to rein in violent crime in the nation's capital.
Capital back. We're taking it back. Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that.
President Trump was joined at his announcement ceremony by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Pam Bondi, Attorney General Kash Patel of the FBI. Here is Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, who also said there's going to be a pretty big deployment of National Guard to Washington, D.C.
At your direction this morning, we've mobilized the D.C. National Guard. It'll be operationalized by the Secretary of the Army, Dan Driscoll, through the D.C. Guard. You will see them flowing into the streets of Washington in the coming week. At your direction as well, sir, there are other units we are prepared to bring in. Other National Guard units, other specialized units. They will be strong, they will be tough, and they will stand with their law enforcement partners. This is nothing new for DOD. As the President noted, at the border, we've got 10,000 troops down there who've been operating in defense cooperation areas, defense zones, where there's zero illegal crossings because of troops on strikers scanning the border. We've been protecting other people's borders for 20 years. It's about time we protect our own. And we're working with ICE and CBP. In Los Angeles, we did the same thing, working with the California National Guard, working with ICE officers. ICE officers deserve to do their job and not be attacked. We will work alongside all D.C. police and federal law enforcement to ensure this city is safe, this city is beautiful. And as I always say about President Trump to the troops, he has their back. And my message to the National Guard and federal law enforcement in Washington is we have your back as well.
The Trump administration is touting these statistics. Among other things, of course, they compared Washington, D.C. and their homicide rate to the other nation's capitals around the world, and it is just jumping off the charts. It's just a national embarrassment. They also said this: D.C. had the fourth highest homicide rate in the United States in 2024, 27.3 homicides per 100,000 people. D.C.'s homicide rate 6 times higher than New York City's rate. Homicide rate in D.C. 4 times higher than L.A.'s rate. The homicide rate in D.C. more than doubles Newark, New Jersey's rate of 12.2 homicides per 100,000 people. So that's just at the national level. They also touted statistics at the international level as well, how D.C., at least reported from all of these other countries, D.C. just jumps off the page. Of course, the media, CNN included, apoplectic, they wanted to remind everybody that homicide rate be damned, D.C.'s doing just fine.
I should note that the most violent moment in recent history in D.C. was January 6th. And it was an attack on the United States Capitol by a lot of people who were doing it in the name of Donald Trump.
Thank you, Dana Bash. President Trump refused to rule out whether or not other hellholes like Chicago, New York City, and other places with high homicide rates could actually get federal intervention.
And we're going to have the same thing here. But then I'm going to look at New York in a little while. Let's do this. Let's do this together. Let's see. It's going to go pretty quickly. And if we need to, we're going to do the same thing in Chicago, which is a disaster. We have a mayor there who's totally incompetent. He's an incompetent man. And we have an incompetent governor there. Pritzker's an incompetent. His family threw him out of the business, and he ran for governor. And now I understand he wants to be president. But I noticed he lost a little weight, so maybe he has a chance. You know, you never know what happens.
Here's President Trump saying, not ruling out doing the same thing or same type of thing in places like New York, Chicago, and other cities with high homicide rates and violent crime rates. Of course, The upside from doing something like that in other blue cities is that you actually make a tangible difference in people's lives and their safety. You can feel when it's safe to actually be outside and walk to and from wherever you are going. And so you might be able, the upside is you might be able to win hearts and minds. Of course, the downside is you don't want to bail out these blue cities. You just don't want to do that. That's the other side of that argument. You want to make sure they suffer and live through the policies that they voted for. So I'm sure that's some of the math that's going on at the White House right now. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, who is now officially basically stripped of any real power thanks to the invocation of the D.C. Home Rule Act, just threw a hissy fit yesterday.
My message to residents is this. We know that access to our democracy is tenuous. That is why you have heard me and many Washingtonians before me advocate for full statehood for the District of Columbia. We are American citizens. Our families go to war. We pay taxes and we uphold the responsibilities of citizenship.
So what are you doing with those tax dollars, Mayor Bowser? I mean, what are you doing with them? Aren't they supposed to be going to the police? So yeah, you pay tax money, but you're not doing very much with it. So there is D.C.'s Mayor Muriel Bowser. There were a lot of man-on-street interviews with Washington, D.C. residents yesterday, including this guy who was up in arms, who says it's not the government's job to punish bad guys.
Green has some thoughts to add to his agenda.
Or is he going to come pick up our trash next? Is that what I should expect? We do have areas with high grass that he can cut. I have infrastructure problems in my community. Can he put some funding on the table for that?
He shouldn't be making those kind of decisions. That's more like a dictator.
Gotti thinks that if this is the way the administration is going to continue...
Everybody now is in like a big old gumbo pot of, you know what I'm saying? You don't know what's in it. You know what I'm saying? That's all. You don't know what you're going to get served.
So that was the dominating story yesterday. President Trump's invocation of the D.C. Home Rule Act, basically federalizing the nation's capital. I love this move. It's well within his purview as President of the United States to do something like this. And I think it's a case study, and you can just do things. This is not quite the same. Yes, Washington, D.C. proper is a blue city, but it's also the nation's capital. If we can restore some modicum of safety on the streets, if staffers for the federal government, for your elected representatives, can actually feel safe going to and from wherever they work and wherever they live, if they can actually accomplish making Washington, D.C. a functioning area again, that's a good thing. It's our nation's capital. And it is a black eye on this country when you've got a Doge staffer who maybe weighs 100 pounds with a heart of a lion going in to intervene when some thugs are beating up and trying to assault a woman. That Doge staffer, big balls, gets beat to a pulp, and that's just not a one-off story. That's a story that's been repeated over and over and over again. It's been getting worse for years now, and President Trump is taking decisive action. Well, before the break, let's go to an unlikely source of a hard question. Here's Kristen Welker of NBC News talking to the aforementioned Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker about his severely gerrymandered state.
Every major group that grades the fairness of congressional maps gives your state an F. Common Cause, a nonpartisan government watchdog, even says your map, and I'm going to quote, represents a nearly perfect model for everything that can go wrong with redistricting. And I guess the question is, you talk about preserving democracy. How do you preserve democracy if you're using the same tactics that you've criticized Texas Republicans for?
But as I say, what they're talking about is a distraction.
Yeah.
The reality is that the violation of people's voting rights.
It's okay when we do it. That's Governor Augustus Gloop of the state of Illinois. That's all they have. You heard Beto O'Rourke, didn't feature him in yesterday's AM update. Beto O'Rourke just saying the quiet part out loud and proud. It's okay when we do it. In fact, we have to do it. And it's okay it's good that we do it. It's good that we gerrymander and criticize the Republicans when they gerrymander because they're a bunch of wannabe fascists. So morally justified, of course. Well, when we come back, Immigration and Customs Enforcement had a busy weekend. And Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum has some thoughts about immigration And J.D. Vance goes in depth on just what's at stake with a potential new census. We'll talk about all that and more next.
The question is this. You're building a big, beautiful ballroom.
Yeah.
Could we build a big, beautiful briefing room? Updated technology, more seats.
I don't want to do that. I don't want you to be comfortable.
As President Trump yesterday during the briefing,
I don't want to make life comfortable.
talking to a reporter who asked for a larger White House briefing room, replying, "No, you guys don't get to be comfortable. I'll allow it. I have been in that room before, and it is tiny indeed." It would be pretty miserable, especially during the middle of the summer, to sit inside that little White House press briefing room. But President Trump giving the press the due and honor that they deserve, which is to say, not very much. Well, Immigration and Customs Enforcement had a busy week, or so they're bragging. The weekend, I should say. On August 9th and 10th, Immigration and Customs say they arrested those, among other things, convicted of the worst crimes like rape, hit and run, domestic assault, and attempted homicide. Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said in a statement, quote, "While Americans were enjoying their weekend, ICE was hard at work arresting the worst of the worst. Some of the dirtbags arrested over the weekend included rapists, attempted murderers, and violent abusers. Some of the worst offenders nabbed over the weekend include 20-year-old Xavier Elizandro Madrid Alvarado, a criminal illegal alien from Honduras, convicted for assault of a family member in Houston, 45-year-old Angel Manuel Marquez, an illegal from Ecuador, convicted on rape in Dayton, 24-year-old Johan Orozco Henao, a criminal illegal alien from Colombia, convicted for aggravated assault in Salt Lake City, and 40-year-old Pablo Rogel Ortiz, an illegal alien from Mexico, convicted for burglary of a vehicle in Austin, Texas, and the list goes on and on. They released the names of these criminal illegal aliens. That's a misnomer, of course, but these illegal aliens who have committed other violent crimes in addition to crossing the border illegally. Of course, that last one coming from Mexico, well, his actual president, that would be Claudia Sheinbaum, was in Mexico City recently to wax poetic about the United States immigration policies. Here she is. She says, "In our discussions, we have stated that we want the work of Mexicans in the United States to be recognized, and I have said it publicly. Without Mexicans who live in the United States, the United States would not be what it is. California, the world's 5th largest economy, would not be what it is, not only without labor workers in the fields, but also in services and manufacturing. Our permanent insistence that the United States, there is the consumption of drugs, and particularly fentanyl, and that if the causes of addictions are not addressed, no matter how many soldiers are placed on the border, there will be this or another drug that is consumed." So there is Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum thumbing her nose at the United States, saying all of my citizens deserve to be in your country, and your country would suck without all of my citizens. And by the way, the drug problem that you have, it's not my fault, it's yours. You're not doing anything properly to treat it. Now, that last part, maybe we're not pursuing this, and it's been the policy position of the United States. The war on drugs has been an abject failure. Maybe there's other things we could be doing. But that's some evil stuff there from Mexico's president. Just completely thumbing her nose at the United States of America, saying your country would suck if it weren't for my citizens, and you should continue to let us have unfettered access to your country so that you can keep letting all of your illegal aliens send their dollars back here to Mexico. Oh, and by the way, you're made up of a bunch of drug addicts, and it's not my fault. Fentanyl has been pouring across the southern border. Just wicked, evil stuff from Claudia Sheinbaum, Mexico's president. Well, back in the U.S., 1 person was killed, 1 was missing, and 10 were injured following an explosion Monday at a steel plant in Clairton, Pennsylvania, on the outskirts of Pittsburgh. Allegheny County Emergency Services and the Allegheny County Police Department responded with a blast at the U.S. Steel Clairton Coke Works plant and confirmed that the fatality had happened. One of the two people initially reported missing was rescued, joining the list of those injured and transported to a local hospital. U.S. Steel Executive Vice President Scott Bukiso told reporters at an afternoon news conference the plant is in stable condition except for the two structures that shut down after the 10:50 a.m. explosion. An investigation into the cause has begun amid the search for the missing worker. Obviously, prayers out for those involved with that horrifying incident outside of Pittsburgh at the steel coking facility in Clairton. Just a horrendous tragedy yesterday in the Keystone State. And now here's this. Vice President J.D. Vance, as part of his interview on Fox News on Sunday, went through what's at stake in great detail with not only redistricting, but the proposed new census, which I've made it clear, and I think you probably agree, needs to happen sooner rather than later. Here he is laying out in great detail what he thinks the aftermath of those actions, taking a new census and redistricting to the nth degree in red states, will actually have on the future of the country.
Yeah, so another crazy thing that I had no idea about, but everybody, even Democrats actually admit this, that the census in 2020 had a major statistical error. And what that meant is that you actually undercounted a few states that are Republican, like Florida and Ohio. You overcounted some blue states. And so what I understand, if you actually did the census anew right now, you would have 10 additional Republican seats and 9 fewer Democrat seats. And really what we're living with, Maria, is the consequence of 40 years of institutional control in the Democratic Party. These guys have fought very dirty for a very long time. And they haven't just won elections and enacted laws that we may not agree with. They have tried to rig the game for Democrats and against Republicans. And thankfully, under President Trump's leadership, you finally see some spine. You finally see some backbone in the Republican Party to fight back against these very aggressive Democratic dirty tricks. But the only way for us to do it is to actually go and do the hard work to reset the scales a little bit. What we want to do is redo the census, but importantly, we want to redistrict some of these red states, and we want to make the congressional apportionment fair in this country. Again, you cannot do it unless Republicans actually take some very decisive action in the months to come. We think they will, and we're obviously supporting them every step of the way.
But do you worry that as Republicans do that, the Democrat blue states are going to do the same thing, and then you'll have redistricting in California, New Jersey, and so on?
You know, Maria, there's just not a whole lot of juice left out of that lemon. The Democrats have already gone as far as they possibly can. Let me give you a crazy statistic. So I believe that it's in New Jersey, Illinois, New York, California, and there's one other Democrat state where you take those 5 states, you have a large number of Democrat representatives. But here's the crazy statistic. President Trump won 43% of those 5 states, and Democrats have something like 85% of the representatives out of those states. You cannot gerrymander these far left states anymore, and that's the whole point. We have unilaterally disarmed in the Republican Party. We have said to the Democrats, if you want to rig the game in your favor in blue states, go ahead. We're going to do nothing to fight back against it. That's crazy. It makes it harder for us to pass our agenda. It makes it harder for us to win elections. And most importantly, it gives Democrats this ability to run roughshod over the country without any pushback from the American people. The democratic system in this country is broken because who you vote for doesn't necessarily get reflected in who your representatives are. We're just trying to rebalance the scales and, frankly, push back against a very unfair system created by the Democrats.
And finally, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. That is Vice President J.D. Vance just laying out in detail the plans, or at least the proposals, for what he envisions happening in the next year or so when it comes to redistricting and hopefully getting a new census done. Now, censuses, especially in a country hundreds of millions of people strong like the United States, that's going to take a while. There's always hope that it can be done sooner than later. But I want to focus in on a couple of things that he talked about there. Number one, what Republicans have done to unilaterally disarm themselves. They have allowed for the last generation of politics in this country to just allow the Democrats to, number one, count illegals in the census, to inflate the populations of states. even though illegals are not citizens, so they should not be counted in a census. But yet they are anyway. And on top of that, Democrats have gone to the nth degree to gerrymander the heck out of their states, while Republicans do nothing because that's not fair. And we're just so much better than the Democrats, aren't we, when it comes to political maneuvering? So much more principled. So that's the first thing. Republicans, I'm sure this will be a shock to absolutely no one, but Republicans have majored in shooting themselves in the foot. The other thing that I want to focus in on from what J.D. Vance was talking about there, he said, he dropped this little phrase in there, these are the things we need to focus on, quote, in the coming months. I don't think that was accidental. I don't think that was a slip of the tongue at all. If Republicans allow any of these actions, any of these redistricting attempts, whether it's in Florida or Texas or Indiana, Missouri, I think I saw as well, if Republicans allow any of these redistricting efforts or any attempt at a new census to just get punted down the road, another 90-day extension, another day or week of waiting for Democrats to show up in Texas, looking at you, Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton, if we just allow this to just be kicked down the road, any of these efforts to be kicked down the road, we're going to get kicked in the mouth in 2028. I really believe that, unless the economy is just roaring. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Republicans to completely reset the field. It's not immoral to gerrymander if you're in a red state. It really is not. It's just not. If we were all playing by an unwritten set of rules, that we actually respected each other, and we were really on the same team here, we're all on Team America, then yes, maybe, just for the good of the country, for the good of the social compact, maybe you should respect some arbitrary fairness markers. But we don't live in that country. You just heard J.B. Pritzker earlier on in this episode had absolutely no defense for Illinois' congressional district. But that's the world that they made, and that's the world that they're going to have to lay down in. So make them lay down in that bed that they made. I just fear if these things that they're talking about, whether it's the census, and especially the redistricting, if this is not done in short order, and I mean the wheels are in motion before the midterms, I fear they're never going to get done. And Republicans, the Republican Party at large, is going to squander a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to completely reset the board of electoral politics in this country. There's everything to gain and everything to lose. Everything to gain, probably Republican control of your federal government for the foreseeable future. Everything to lose, no more Republican control ever. I think that's what's at stake here. And we can't see any more dragging of the feet. Let's get busy living, get busy dying, get busy counting heads, but not the ones who are here illegally. That's going to do it for a Tuesday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.